Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Ruske, and I am joined by my three fabulous partners today, Franciska Dekker,
Hi.
Rowe,
Hello.
and Andrea Henning.
Hello.
You could hear our accents, so you'll get a sense of where we're from. And by the way, we were in our last meeting, someone told us that waving was such an American thing. So I love that you two did that this time. Thank you. Welcome. It's Friday afternoon, and we want to thank you for joining our Facebook Live. It's something that we do every week. We hope that you find some value in it. We take a topic that's been bantered around behind the scenes in our meetings this week, and we bring it to the forefront each week on Friday at about this time. So thank you for joining us. You can always check out these videos at the Tiara Leadership YouTube channel, and we do post them here on Facebook. So hopefully that you're finding some meaning in those. So thank you for joining. And if you don't know who Tiara is, we are a leadership development company that specialize in helping women advance in their lives. And that, it's their work and their play. It's their whole life. So this conversation we're having today is about the being of a leader. And we are going to start this conversation with a statement that might shock you. Do you know that most women do not consider themselves leaders? So it's one of the things that is fundamental in our core beliefs at Tiara is that every woman is a leader. Mm-hmm. So we want you to get over that hurdle first and just recognize you are. Where you lead and how you lead is uniquely to you. But the being of a leader is a rather elusive topic. So elusive that even preparing for this conversation has led to the four of us saying, okay, so say that without jargon and make that sound, more specific, because it just sounds so out there. So that's where we're going to start our conversation today. What do we mean by this being of a leader? Peg, can I tee you up here and just start us out?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons I wanted to have us talk about this today is that it is one of those conversations that we can be in and everyone goes like, yeah, I get it. And then you realize like, well, maybe I don't. And I think one of the things that we recognize in the work that we do specifically in leadership development, specifically with women, is that we have all been taught how to manage. We've been taught, all of the things that we should pay attention to when we're managing, not only things, but others and people. But then there's a point at which we need to translate that into now, how do we actually lead? How do we ignite interest in other people? How do we inspire other people to be a part of what it is that we're doing that we think is important? How do we connect with them in a way that has them say, you know what, I want to be part of that. I actually want to follow. So there's this idea of leadership and followership that I think comes in here. Mm-hmm. And leaders who have sorted that out and show up as, both confident and willing to work with others and collaborative and have a commitment to where they're trying to go and they're bringing people along, are the leaders that people gravitate towards. Yeah. And so one of the ways you can know if you've got this being of leader effectively happening is you can understand what your impact is on others. If your impact is leaving people so they're sort of like, no big deal, or are they really excited about the prospect of following you, then you're probably embodying the being of leader.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we use kind of like polar opposites a lot when we talk about this. We talk about the being of a leader and we talk about the doing of a leader. And the doing of a leader is a lot of the mechanics you mentioned, Peg, in the managing. It's like doing those things, that to do. Mm-hmm. Franciska or Andrea, what else would you add here definitionally to what we consider the, trying to put the label, a clear label on what the being of a leader means?
Good question. I find we talked about this briefly before, and I find it so difficult to put in words. I do note that in conversations during the day or on social media or in a newspaper or wherever, there is a lot of focus on what are we doing, what must be done, how are we going to change the world, how are we going to lead better lives. It's all about how are we going to do things. And there is an assumption that apparently something is happening, but we are not included in that. So something is happening separate from us, and that is not the case. It is our being that is part of it. And I think part of the reason why that is not being addressed, because it's so difficult to grasp. It is something that cannot be grasped by the mind. It is more like an energy. It is a state of, when do you follow someone? Of course, you listen to the story, you listen to the content. That's mainly your brain doing that and analyzing and judging and putting things into buckets or baskets or making decisions. But there's this whole other part that is speaking to us and addresses more the wisdom, like, and do we believe it or not? So there's another part of us that is also sensing information, and what we are, how do you say, emanating, uitstralen, radiating outward. And often we don't have a clue, but because it's so difficult to grasp, we just say, okay, well, let's just disregard it and talk about the doing, because that's what counts. Right. That's what counts, and the results that come from that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the radiating of the energy that we're putting out there. That's a nice way to describe, like, to me, the being of a leader is as Peg was talking about, the impact, how you come across. I always like to say, and with a lot of the teams and the groups that we work with, when I say this, they usually chuckle, is I said, defining and showing up as the being of a leader, right? It's kind of like, how babies and dogs, they just kind of can smell you. They know if you're a dog or a baby person, and you don't even have to open your mouth. Like, they just know it. Yep. Like, that is what you're describing, Franciska. You're giving off a certain kind of energy that is either repelling people or attracting them, as Peg was describing. And when we talk about the being of a leader, that being is both those things. I mean, you could repel people, and or you could attract them. And what we're talking about is using that being in a positively influential way, so that it is way more attractive, that people might not even know that it's a conscious choice that they're following you. It just feels good to follow your leadership.
Yeah. I'm also thinking that what you just said about that many women do not consider themselves as a leader. So I'm just imagining, like, if that's like the feeling place that you come from, then we can ask ourselves, what are the results that we are getting? What's the influence that we are unconsciously soliciting from the people around us?
Andrea, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think what people might recognize is when you are at the other end, at the receiving end, that you are always looking for something in a leader, and what you're looking for is that something that you can trust. Is someone trustworthy? Is the person congruent? And that is what we smell in people, indeed, and it's also quite elusive, but we kind of know. And I think just right now in the States, with everything's going on, we are so much looking for the being behind the leaders. Can we trust? Are they congruent? Do they seem to actually mean what they say? Can they pull it off? Are they powerful enough? So it's that piece that we want to grasp.
That's a great segue to the second point that we wanted to touch on, and that is, what difference does it make? Why is it important that we understand this difference, that, recognizing the way we come across? Like, what difference do you think it makes?
I think a lot of this comes down to having that awareness. So someone can actually naturally show up and embody the being of leader and not really be fully aware of it. And as a result, they don't actually use that capability or that capacity to its fullest extent. They could actually be even more powerful in their leadership in a very positive way if they were aware of it. So for me, it becomes important because it can make a difference to the degree that you really understand who you are and you're deliberate and intentional about showing up in a way that feels, to Andrea's word, congruent with, your value system and what's important to you, and you're using that influence and that being of leader in a positive way. It can actually exponentially make a much bigger difference than if you're sort of like moving through, but not really fully embracing who you're being as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can put in a tangible thing that women might hear. We hear a lot that, the women that we deal with, the professional women that are, trying to advance in their career, to your point, Franciska, some women don't even consider themselves leaders. Well, of course, then the impact they're having is they're not showing up as a leader, right? So their being is not leader-like. When women don't show up as leaders, they tend to be, to your point, Peg, followers. So if you're a follower, they might be very good at doing tactical things, executing, getting things done, moving the needle on the project. But then what we hear is that they're not seen as strategic. And that is that is showing up with the outcome and the impact that you want to have, whether it's the project or the way the team works or where you're heading or the vision. And even in that simple, are you showing up strategically or tactically? Inside of that, you can find what's missing in the being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now here's a rule for all of us for the remainder of the video. Anytime we're too vague, we have to nail each other down and say, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. I would say, Peg, in terms of difference, it makes also a huge difference for oneself. Like, how do I show up? I can maybe not always succeed in what I want, but I can feel good about it or less good about it. And if I show up with my being, with my congruent being, I can still feel good about the whole situation. Whereas when I'm not, I can really feel pretty bad and beat myself up about it. So the more we are the centered being, the better we can deal with whatever life throws at us.
Let me switch that question slightly. Why is it important for women that they really get this concept? Why is it important for them in their life, in their career, to understand this?
I think what we observe so often is that women get stuck in what we've come to call the competency trap, where they feel that in order to prove their worth, prove their value in an organization, for example, that their real key to that is by doing and accomplishing and producing results, which is absolutely important. This is not about discounting that at all, but they put so much focus on demonstrating their competence, being the best at what they are doing, that they fail to recognize that this being of leader has equal import, and that for them to have the kind of influence they want to have, to be able to move ideas forward, to be able to engage others, if they're only focused on, as Franciska said, the doing, and demonstrating competence, then all the great ideas they have, all the strategic thoughts they've got, the vision they have, never comes to fruition. It never gets put forward. And for me, that's a huge missing. It's like organizations in particular are missing a whole set of creative, important ideas and opportunities, because when women don't show up in this being of leader, they're really cheating themselves and the organization out of where they could be going.
Yeah, it clearly can be career limiting for women.
Yeah.
Because it does keep them in the, that mid-tier manager level, and it limits their ability. I think the other thing I would add to what you're saying, Peg, is that we know We use our TR model for true leadership in all of our programming, and it talks about awareness, and it talks about producing results, and the third dimension is influence and power.
Mhm.
And the being of leader is really defined in that influence and that influence domain, because
Right.
it is our definition of influence in that area is about being able to produce more results than you could possibly do on your own, because you're doing it through your collaboration and your work with others.
Mhm.
You're inviting them along. You're inviting them to join you,
Mhm.
and you've empowered them to do that, and they are.
Yes.
And that's a very positive, powerful being of a leader. And the simplest way is you can't do it all on your own. You can't continue to add more to your plate. You have to learn how to influence through others. And that being element is so critical, because people won't give you their best if they don't feel you're your best.
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah.
And one
Yeah.
thing that I want to clarify is that we're not suggesting that you abandon the doing of leadership and just focus on the being of leadership. You know, leaders at different levels, you know, when you're earlier on in your career, you're going to be more in that doing area. And as you develop in your career, you're going to begin to develop those, you know, awarenesses and skills around the being of leader. And as you move forward in your career, you may rely more on the being of leader than the doing. But it's a dance you're doing all the time
Mhm.
with both of them. It's not one
Mm.
or the other. It's actually both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Indeed, yes. I'm thinking of another aspect why it is important, especially for women, to grow this awareness about their being, because women and the feminine maybe is so prone to understanding others and understanding the challenge and understanding whatever is outside and building up a relatedness to that. And the pitfall then is building up that relatedness with that other thing or that other person, with the being of that other person, before having established the relatedness with themselves. So these sort of samenvloeien, how do you say, flow together, merge
Yes,
with
there you go.
the thing, the other person, etc. And then they are not not recognizable anymore as their
Mm.
powerful
Mhm.
being and in their leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just go quickly. Any final comments around the being of leader, and anything you want to
Mm.
make sure people hear in your message about how important it is, or why bother?
I think for me, what comes to mind is the idea of leaving with really delving into who you see yourself, you know, being as a leader, and then really owning that and owning
Mm.
the impact of that in your organization, in your life, in your family, in others, so that that's something you can count on for yourself and other people can count on you for.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would add to that the point of you feel better, you feel more powerful, and taking on new challenges, more peaceful from the inside, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah, indeed. And let me add that we can all see it as a journey. It's not a problem to be solved, to discover your being from like before tomorrow or before the end of the week, but it's like an ongoing thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would add that we always talk about producing results, and it's important to produce results, but it's also important to maintain and create relationships along the way.
Mhm.
And when you combine those two things, that is a very powerful leader, but power in a positive way.
Mhm.
And that's what we're talking about, is when leaders really get the being, they know that it's not results at all costs, it's results with people.
Mhm.
So if you are at this point and we're about to sign off, but we want to give you an assignment to think about. And we want you to take the conversation that we've had and we want you to apply it to your own life. So be thinking about areas where you know you show up very powerfully, like your being is just so attractive. And also recognize others that you're attracted to, that actually have a being that you like, that you enjoy, and take it out of the unconscious domain and put it into the conscious, because that's when we get really good at honing in our own being of a leader. So we hope you'll take that on as an assignment. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoy these conversations, please join us again next Friday. Go to our YouTube channel. You'll see others out there as well. And if you're not a Tiara Resource Circle member, you should join now, because we've got all of our content available right now for women around the world. And you can join by going to tiararesourcecircle.com. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.